We are so excited to have Veena here today and to the She Supply Chains podcast. So we always like Veena to start off with sharing a little bit about who you are personally and professionally.
Thank you so much for having me over. It's lovely to be here. I'm Veena Radhakrishna. I'm a co-founder and head of software at Cartesian Kinetics. We build cool robotics for warehouses. So if you've ordered something on the e-commerce platform and ever wondered how that magically reached your hands the next day, we build robotics that make that happen. Systems like ours. So what we build is not just the hardware of the robots, but we also build the software that brings it all together. So there's inventory, there's human associates in the warehouse, there's robots. So there's a software. It's almost like an orchestra and a symphony that brings it all together,
Oh,
and that's what we build.
I love it. So you've been in the supply chain industry for quite some time now. What was your aha moment when you knew like this is the place for you?
Yeah, this the supply chain has always fascinated me. I started my career with Intel. At Intel, I was automating their data from across different locations. The primary intent there was to optimize the working of their fab, and then I moved on to IBM, where I got to see uh, how the supply chain dynamics works in the sense that I was working with demand forecasting, and then I was trying
Yeah.
to tie that to production. And all along, I've worked in different aspects of the supply chain. I've worked with building robotic systems for first mile assembly, like parts assembly, material handling, and stuff like that. Then in the middle mile, I worked with packaging, secondary packaging, bulk loading, palletizing, such applications. And the last mile, I've built platforms like uh, for onboarding partners for last mile delivery. So I've worked with different aspects of the supply chain, and
Yes, you have from the demand all the way to the final delivery.
yeah, uh, and we always felt that the warehouses could get a lot more efficient with their operations, and that was how the idea of Cartesian and
yeah.
Cart Plus came about.
And then, Veena, can you talk about when you're at a dinner party or traveling, how do you describe to someone what you do?
So, like I started off, I asked people to imagine what getting a product in their hand would mean, and what they think would go behind the scenes to make that happen. And invariably, people think Amazon. People sometimes like it's a no-brainer, right? And invariably, and some people go beyond that, think Kiva and robots running around a warehouse. But what most people fail to understand is that there are tens of thousands of warehouses beyond Amazon in this country.
Mhm.
Like every corner of the country, there is a warehouse that's actually chugging along. These are warehouses run by brands themselves, warehouses run by third-party logistics companies that are actually fulfilling these orders in addition to an Amazon warehouse. And for them, robotics is not doesn't come as easily as it does to an Amazon warehouse, which is built up greenfield to be
Yeah.
robotics ready.
And then,
That's
yeah.
that's what we try to bring to those warehouses, and that's how I try to introduce Cartesian to them.
Vina, you've noted that 80% of warehouses are legacy facilities, so essentially sometimes ignored by the first wave of automation. And so, why do you think the industry has been kind of obsessed with greenfield or new builds? And then, what was the moment where you realized that retrofitting was like the real frontier and where you should focus?
So what we should understand is that it's difficult to automate. I mean, especially in an existing warehouse
Yeah.
where you have operations already running. It's not easy to bring in automation. One is there is a cost of making the warehouse automation ready, in the sense that there is floor prep involved, there is infrastructure that's already been placed, running multiple years, and you need to many a time bring that down to kind of overhaul the infrastructure to make it automation ready.
Yeah.
And then there's permitting, there is actual cost of downtime, There are some areas of the warehouse that needs to get shut down for building in an automation, and there's obviously a running warehouse cannot afford that. And all this kind of deters people from warehouses from automating. But there is a crying demand for automation because on the one side there's customers who now got used to how an Amazon delivers parcels the next day, the same day. So warehouses really need to bring in automation to deliver to that kind of a promise. Also on the supply side, like we saw a glut of warehouses post COVID. So there was no investment that were happening in greenfield warehouses. So these greenfield warehouses, the brownfield warehouses to bring in automation kind of struggled because these existing warehouses had to be utilized, the existing capacity had to be utilized. There was automation that had to be brought into brownfield capacity, and that was a challenge. And the next thing, today, there is a supply side challenge with respect to a lot of data centers coming up. So there's a lot
Mm.
of demand for land. So that's driving up cost of warehousing. So there is a need for warehousing to become more efficient, to utilize land more effectively. So all of this is there is a crying need for automation, but it's difficult to automate. So that's what's happening.
As you were talking, I mean, for me, it was all the things that keep us from going to automation in our brownfield sites, and not just in warehouses, sometimes even on like the manufacturing floor. Like, oh, you're gonna have to do this infrastructure, you're gonna have to rewire everything, you're gonna do the floor prep, like all these things. How do you like? Do you find though that there's still an ROI if it's done right? Like they can still afford to do these things.
So what we actually do is we work with customers and try to analyze ROI. I mean, definitely, if you need to overhaul a lot of existing systems, ROI becomes a little more difficult to justify, which is why a lot of these warehouses have not adopted automation. And it's easy to bring in automation like AMRs, which kind of work with what is existing. But even AMRs require floor prep. Maybe not the other infrastructural changes, but they still require the shiny floors to be there for them to navigate the warehouse. So it is difficult to justify upfront. And how we've tried to make it easy is we ensure that there is no infrastructure requirement upfront when there is
Gotcha.
we kind of go and fit into existing infrastructure, and there the ROI becomes a lot more easy to justify.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, with your background, I love that you started out at Intel and then you were at IBM and you're really managing all this complex data. How has it then influenced how you approach like the physical hardware problem of warehouse robotics? Like any tie between the early experience and what you do now?
So at Intel, I very early on learned that there is so much data and disparate systems. So it's very important for all this data to kind of talk to each other. And so to make your overall system easy to interact. I mean, so you really need these systems to efficiently work together and analyze that data to bring in that efficiency into the production. And then on like I was mentioning earlier, IBM helped me look at connecting how the supply and demand equation kind of balances out. And I've tried to use that learning with my team to bring in flexibility with respect to how we model our data, how we how we bring in dynamic workflows. Today, there's like so much uncertainty in the warehouse. So what was working yesterday may not work today. You gotta keep changing how things have to be done. So your system has to be super flexible. You need to be able to that, and that's why I kind of used the word orchestra earlier. So it's like think of think of this as building blocks, and you kind of bring it together in different bits and pieces
Yeah.
to make it like a different song every time. But
Mm.
the building blocks kind of remain the same. So that's the overarching principle that's kind of guided me, and all of this has been embellished by the experience that I've had over the years.
Love that.
And Vina, you talked about kind of the challenges around, not everybody has the leisure to, we're just going to shut the warehouse down and put in a new project. And so can you talk about Cartesian's approach and walk us through, and it sounds like it's very non-disruptive. So walk us through the engineering challenges of building a robot that can work around existing fire suppression systems, old floors without a permanent overhaul. So talk through your approach and how that helps really support your customers' needs.
A lot of it exists in the modularity and simplicity of the solution. One thing that that we keep hearing when we host customers to visit our site is, "Oh my God, this looks so simple." And people who are non-engineers are immediately able to relate to how the product comes together, and that's always like a very satisfying thing for us. So what we've done is we have we have 3 or 4 core subsystems, which is the robots themselves, the robotic paths on which they move on, the lifts on which the bots translate from one vertical axis to another. They go on the lift. So it's essentially this, and the pick stations at which the pickers actually pick the items. So we kind of choose these subsystems in different configurations, and we put it all together to based on what the throughput requirements are and what the customer demands. And the great thing is that we can actually go in and fit into existing racks. So we can put in our robotic parts between an existing racking structure in the warehouse. So, and we work with standard racks. We don't work with any proprietary racks. We work with standard racks, standard totes. So that makes it like,
Yeah.
and we can go one aisle at a time. And our software is built to kind of configure itself. So as we expand in terms of which aisle gets automated, the software now knows that the robot can now be dispatched across these aisles. And with respect to fire suppression systems, we work with not just flat decks, we also work with wire decks. So if you have some sprinkler systems in place, you can kind of run the water through in case of emergency. Our system will still be okay. And all of this kind of makes it much easy for
It does. It just sounds so clever. Like, why hasn't somebody come up with
I
this
know. Every
before?
time we talk to
Because I'm just
people,
like, sold. You can do one aisle at a time. I
I
don't have to
know.
rehaul my whole building. Yes, it's wonderful.
thank
And
you.
I love
Okay.
how just sometimes we can think about automation and to your point, I think people are expecting it not to be easy or simple. And to your point, Katie, like sometimes the simple thing that people need and makes sense is the right thing. So I just
It
love that.
is like instead, because again, I think people are like, oh, you got to build a new warehouse and you have to do all these things. And it's like, actually, we've invested a lot in this current facility.
Mhm.
How could we use this? I think it's great.
And the added benefit I've seen is that it makes automation a lot more relatable.
Mm.
Mm,
So one traditional problem with automation is that people are scared of automation, and when people start relating to automation, the adoption increases, and people
yeah.
are working with our system.
Mhm.
All right. So last year was a really big year for you and the company. I think it's called the Cart Plus platform. Went live at its first PL location. As that happened, I'm sure anytime there's change, you give feedback. But what was like a surprising piece of feedback that you received from, call it like boots on the ground, like the frontline team, once the robots started moving? Anything that surprised you that they shared with you?
So I think it's a kind of takeoff on what we were talking about earlier. So the point of contact at our customer's place was the IT program manager, who traditionally in all warehouse people are super scared of IT because uh, uh, they hate new automation coming in and they make life difficult for automation to.
And it always breaks on like a Friday night.
That's never happened to us, Katie, for sure.
And this IT program manager looked at our system, worked in it for a few minutes, and he said, "Oh my God! I mean, I've seen so many automation systems. I've integrated with so many systems, and your system is super simple." And that
Mm.
was really really satisfying.
Well, yeah, it speaks to what you're trying to get after instead of making it too complex. Like, let's keep it simple.
And then to follow up on that, Vina, so you highlight like low touch integration is a key metric. So as you talked about in an industry where software integration can take a year. How is Cartesian shortening that runway for warehouse managers who are already stretched thin, who see it, they're not necessarily excited to see you coming? So, how have you approached that problem?
We've done it is we've we've kept like multiple ways in which we can integrate with our system. So we can integrate with very simple just scan gun interfaces. We can integrate using flat files, for example. If your WMS doesn't provide for API touch points, we can go the low tech way, work with flat file batches. API integration, we have a limited number of touch points that we need to work with. So we need to take order information. We need to send back order status. We need to replenish the system. So we take replenishment tasks, or we send out replenishment tasks and send a status on that. Effectively, that's all we need to talk to the systems about. So a lot of these APIs are very standardized, and almost every WMS system has these kind of API touch points, because we don't kind of talk to every single layer. We do our own planning of the orders. We do our own management of totes within our system. So a lot of this gets handled within our system. So the need for talking to the WMS for all these reasons is not there. So we
Hmm.
afford to be low tech. Like for example, one of the installations that we are planning to go live at Louisville, it took us all of a day to discuss with the existing WMS vendor to figure out how the interactions will be. And to make it all simple, we also kind of build out a digital twin. So everything is mapped out virtually. We do the integrations with this digital twin, run live customer orders through the digital twin, so we test everything even before we do the first installation there. So it kind of makes it easy for the customer to visualize how it'll all work when it comes live at the warehouse.
Okay, I have a I don't know, it's not a dumb question, but a question. Why do other companies make it so hard? I don't I mean, Kate, I know your perspective, but I don't feel like it's as seamless. Maybe
Mm,
just
it doesn't feel that way.
I don't know. So I just love this concept. I'm just wondering why the industry hasn't made it easier overall.
It is hard because a lot of these systems have been running for many years, and they've been designed for different types of workflows. So if the flexibility is not built in right up front, it becomes hard to kind of work around these existing systems. So that's the hard part.
Think too, even your approach, you're thinking about how do I integrate into a current ecosystem rather than sometimes I think some of the bigger companies are like, this is the system. It is a different,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so 2026, Veena, this is like a big year of growth for you, your team, the company. You're really moving from validation to scale. What are some of the hurdles you're worried about as you go through this next I guess S curve, if you will? Yeah.
I think this is like a very exciting time for us.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, I think one thing that we are focusing on is building the delivery capability. What differentiates us is we can do a very quick install. We can do a 8 to 10 week install at the customer site, which is very unheard of in the warehouse automation space.
Yeah.
And we do this with crews who are not trained. But at the same time, if you want to ramp up and deliver to a larger system, we do need these delivery partners who can actually make this happen at that same speed. And what we could do, the handholding we could do with when we had a couple of installs, we may not be able to do as we scale the number of installs. So how do we make
Right.
it more independent? How do we standardize our products? How do we reduce the part count on our products? So a lot of that. And upfront, what we've always been trying to do is collect all our metrics in a consolidated place. We've been using that to run our learning models, build in predictive maintenance. So we're now striving to put in like a customer success team, kind of give more love to the customer, talk to the
Yeah.
customer teams, ensure that whatever we've promised with respect to uptime, with respect to throughput, we're working around any initial challenges that may be to ensure that every promise of ours is met all the way. So this is how we are thinking about scaling.
Love it too, because it's like you said, when it's smaller, you can have a very high touch, but as you're scaling, you physically can't be
Mhm.
in all those places. And so, how do you build up a team around you? I think it's something that even as we're doing things inside our own companies, you do these pilots, and the pilot goes really well, and then we go to scale it. And I think that's what it is. We forget that,
Yeah.
like, hey, that group that was involved in the pilot was so high touch and really knew it. Like, you have to build that as you scale.
And I also find in the pilot, we put, like, our best people at it to make
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
I mean, we're getting
Yep.
all the like rock stars, and then we're always so confused when it doesn't go well after that because and we like dedicate their like full-time job to this pilot. And then the
Yeah.
minute we start, proliferating out, we're like, what happened? And it's like, yeah, now everyone else has to figure this out and they have to figure it out on top of everything else they have going on. And that's where I do think we get it you have challenges. I don't know if we get it wrong, but it's like the strategy is hard to maintain when you start growing. And so, Veena, your time at Take It, you focused on giving the buyer control over the last mile. So how does your current work in the warehouse, kind of the back end, directly impact that front end customer experience of speed and convenience?
I take it what we built was trying to bring in traceability and control for the customer once a product leaves a warehouse. And what we focus now is how do we ensure that the product is picked predictably and efficiently within a warehouse. So this means how do you plan orders better? How do you process orders better? How do you increase the picker efficiency? So our system kind of increases the picker efficiency almost 5x. And because we orchestrate all our orders, we sequence them better. That means that uh, an order that hits a warehouse even later in the day can be fulfilled the next day. So what used to be order cutoff times of 2 p.m. can now extend to a 5 p.m. So that means for the customer, they can place an order much later in the day and still be assured that the order will get shipped out at the warehouse the next day. So that's how we kind of give more control to the customer.
But okay, one of the things, because we like to do lots of research on our guests, one of the things that struck both Courtney and myself is in every one of your roles, you really talk a lot about business metrics and how you can be. It doesn't really matter where you are, and you've worked across all aspects of supply chain and still that consistent thread on business metrics. Since you're in warehouse operations right now at this moment, is there anything there that you're like, hey, I think this is a metric that gets overlooked but can be so impactful? And maybe it's one, maybe it's a couple, but would love your thoughts on that.
This is so much metric as much as it is a mindset.
Hmm.
I think what's going to be really differentiating warehouses is everybody is going to want to move materials really quickly. So materials moving at the speed of data is going to be tantamount.
Yeah.
So we talk about physical AI, we talk about all these fancy systems. At the ground, if you cannot match whatever the AI is thinking with
Mm,
the movement, all of it will fall flat. So
Mm.
how do you efficiently move the atoms at the same speed, at the same agility as data? So that's key metric that, and this means flexibility, this means dynamic workflows, this means all of this coming together and kind of morphing to match the productivity needs. I think that's the metric that warehouses will have to hold themselves accountable to.
I like that. I had
I
not
do
thought
too.
about that.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter really how fancy your planning system is. If you can't move the materials at that same speed,
Yeah.
you're not really adding value. Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about this around kind of this tension between automation, robotics, and then human labor. And so, can you talk about how the Omni Rack robotic system can change the daily life of a warehouse associate? And if we're looking at the future, you talked about this like orchestra. Do you see the human labor as like the conductor, or like how do you see it evolving as technology continues to increase in the warehouse area?
Like a human associate in a warehouse will, I think it starts off with how they interact with the system. So instead of walking like a half marathon around the warehouse, like picking items, you actually make it a lot more engaging for the operator. The operator, or the associate. Now they're given like a bunch of tasks. They could picking at one time, they could be doing a cycle count at some other time, they could be replenishing the system at some other time. So the physical fatigue is reduced, it becomes a lot more engaging. We try to gamify our interfaces. So there's always that portion of interest that is there. So people are excited to use the robotic systems and pick out of that. And other than that, there is in a warehouse, there are a lot of temporary workers who act as associates. So it's always a challenge with the temporary associates not knowing the layout of a warehouse. So if you have to pick off the shelves and you don't know where to go look for material, that's always a challenge.
Mm,
So a robotic system like ours makes life easy for somebody who doesn't know the layout of a warehouse. It's very easy to pick up and to use and pick off a robotic interface like ours because the material is presented to you and you just have to follow a task. So somebody can be onboarded and trained in literally in minutes. So overall, this gives the associate a lot more control with respect to how things are run. And I think you put it beautifully. When it's really like the associate is like a conductor of the orchestra kind of, and seeing how all this comes together and magically being more productive in fulfilling orders.
I appreciate too the design behind it. I know sometimes it's called gamification, but how do you we met with 2 co-founders from Retail Ready, and they talked about how they as they've designed their system, theirs is more focused on compliance with shipping, but making it fun. And I think sometimes we forget, like, you're just like, "I'm gonna design a warehouse management system, it's gonna do all these things," but at the end of the day, like, people are gonna be using this 8 to 12 hours a day. How do you make it a little bit more interesting and have some joy in there and
yeah.
some fun? So I like that too. All right. So, Veena, we like to end with a leadership question. And so, for you, what is a piece of advice that was shared with you? And it could be very early on in your career, it could be more recently, but it's something that it continues to hold meaning for you and it still guides you.
I think if you're really solving a genuine problem and you go at it understanding what the problem is and really solving the problem, you will succeed. I think companies can come and go, but until unless you are solving something for the customer, the company is not really going to get off the ground. But really, if you think in the put yourself in the shoes of the customer and try to make their life better, definitely you will succeed.
Reminder.
And I think, and Katie and I talk about that even with the podcast and other
Hmm.
things, like what are we offering and why are people listening? I love the simplicity of that because I think it's very easy. Katie and I have dealt with a lot of different companies and have software, everything. And to just think about if you're solving someone's problem, you will be there will be
You'll be
someone out there
wildly
that wants it.
successful. You
Yeah.
will.
So
Yeah.
really love that. Well, thank you so much, Vina. This has been a wonderful conversation and so great to meet you
So
virtually.
great to meet you.
And yeah, like we'll make sure that as we do the show notes and we definitely highlight what your organization's doing and just love that you're a founder and just love seeing the breadth of your career as well. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much. I think it's been lovely. Thank you so much once more for having me over. And it's not very often that you get to meet so many females kind of running things. It's always one special moment that I'm talking to you guys. So love it. I really enjoyed myself having being.
If we're ever out in the California area, we will
I
look you up.
know.
I
We will
know.
look you
San
up.
Jose, yeah.
I'd love to host you. And we're going to have our install in Louisville come together. I think we should go live in probably in May, early June.
Okay, well, let me know when you're there, Vina. I'm there all the time because my parents are there too.
Like,
So
yeah, that'd be
I don't
so
budging my like Harper says, budging
cool.
budging my way into the party.